You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All right, great. We're back and we're talking about Liberty Villages. It started out for me. It started out as a way to make money. I lived in a little two-house town, got 5 acres, used to be the post office of Bingham, New Mexico, and how do you make money on it? I figure if you put a bunch of teepees up here, people in a yurt up here, and you do restaurant and organic food, people driving by and see those teepees and come stay in it. So it would be a way to make $50 a night, $500 or $600 a night. Turn some property that I paid 50,000 for to something that would have been valued at a quarter million. How are you gonna get them back on the farm after they've seen LA? I figured if people would come and stay in our teepee for the novelty of it, that it would also be a situation. Eat good food, and you got a gift shop there that's got all this information. Get these shows, get these videos, get these books. Educate people and see. This is what it tastes like. This is what it tasted like when my grandmother planted her garden, did her own canning and all that. And so many of these skills have been lost. They've just been lost. And I think they are necessary for our survival. And the co-op's working for me. It's working in Oklahoma on the farm. But if I put this brochure together, and we've got all the sources for this, you get everybody on one block working for the same thing. Growing food, then you're all working together and not trying to intrude on your privacy, not trying to change your lifestyle, don't care how you worship, don't care what color you are. But if you want to be productive, if you want to make something, I make words. That's what I do. I sell books. I got books up on freeamerican.com, shop.freeamerican.com. I write pretty good books. And I'm going to be working on 2 more about the legalization of drugs in America, the abolishing of the laws against victimless crimes. I started working on that 45 years ago. And of course, I also have read so much and studied science fiction as well as science so much. I pretty much come to the conclusion that I might as well write fiction from now on because everything that you can imagine probably has happened to someone somewhere in this universe. So it gives a big field. Yeah, yeah, okay, kosher. If Brother Clay had followed the sound business plan I offered him, that I learned from my people, he would be a little further ahead now. No, sir, you're a coward. You are a liar. I don't have a phone. I can't call you. I don't want you to know who I am. You're a coward, and I got no use for you. I don't know whether you're Jewish. I doubt that you are. I think you're just an asshole. But I appreciate you listening to me. And I don't think since you've never sent a donation or bought a book, I think you're a liar. I think you're just a plain internet troll, and I got no respect and no use for you. Now, some of you other people in here, Heisenberg is doing some, making some great points. You know, gardener, mechanic, carpenter, roofer, plumber, the list goes on and on. All of you got something to offer. Yeah, you want our website made? See Heisenberg. We can do this, and we are working together. It is happening, and it's happening too. You know, a lot of times you think I'm just doing this. Why am I doing this? What am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? Well, we're doing it for the children. Yeah, you could. You're absolutely right. You could provide the capital, and if you were smart and weren't trying to get that extra 10%. Oh, let's see. I got a whole movie here. I took to Hollywood to a Jewish attorney, and he said HBO wants it. I got it. You can read it up on my site. I did the work. I did the work. But the Jewish attorney, after keeping me standing on his front porch for 45 minutes before he opened the door, I got it. HBO wants this. HBO wants this. But, you gotta sign the contract. You gotta sign the contract. You gotta sign the contract. I can't do nothing unless you sign the contract. The contract wanted me to give him 10% to be my agent, 10% to be my lawyer, and 15% to be my manager, and 45% to be the producer of the film that I wrote the screenplay for. Sorry, ain't gonna happen. Don't want to do business with you. Sorry I drove 500 miles to see your scam. I've made a lot of money off of Jews. Unfortunately, they always had to take that extra 10%. Had to Jew me down to another 10%. But I made a lot of money off of them and never really had that much problem with them before I got into the Patriot movement, before I started threatening their banking system, before I started threatening this whole banking, television, publishing scam. That's why I'm selling my books on my internet and on my website, because you can't even get my website and Intel or Intuit, Office Depot, or the public library. Do I get a little bit hostile over that? Do I feel like I'm being taken advantage of? Yeah, I do that. But you know, I just had another host on here, another person on here, and I said, "How do you?" The problem we got, as I see it, the problem I have here, we have, is how do you fight evil without becoming evil? You know, no, I don't want to go out and kill all the Jews. No, I don't want to kill all the Mexicans. I don't want to kill nobody. I want everybody to have the same chance. Ah! Knock it off. Hey! I don't think you've, sorry, Kosher. I don't think you've contributed anything to my efforts. I think you're a coward, and that's all I got to say about that. Now I'll just ignore you. Yeah, for a modest fee, 85%. They'll be glad to underwrite your efforts. That's exactly what they did. That's exactly why I didn't do it. That's exactly why you're not watching the Lucifer series on your HBO right now. Doesn't mean it's dead, though. Doesn't mean it's dead. Doesn't mean we haven't stopped anything, and we have had an effect over the years. The organic thing, the hemp. Look at the hemp thing. We got marijuana now. You can smoke it in 16 to 18 states. 16 to 18 states. You can do so. I got 7 years in prison for doing that in Texas, 45 years ago. Like I said, got to write a book. I may make more money off of that than I anything else I've done since. Yeah, I'm going back and editing now what I wrote, and it's hey, yeah, you weren't bad for a youngster. You weren't bad what you did, but a few things have changed. That that office filled with IBM computers is a little outdated. I'm sorry, that office filled with Selectric typewriters is a little outdated. But when I wrote it, computers didn't exist, and I wasn't able to see into the future. And if you're Jewish and you want to contribute something, yeah, just will not allow usury. If you want a loan at 10%, if you want to put money out for 10% so somebody can at a home in the co-op can buy the materials to make the solar panels, can buy the wood to make the windmills, can buy the steel to erect the towers. Yeah, I don't mind you making 10%. But again, how does that go? Let me look at this. I don't have to be cheated. I don't have to be taken advantage of. It just ain't necessary. I'm not, if you want to loan money, you got money, and you want to put it in and invest it. I don't mind you making 10%. As long as the co-op gets a little percentage of that. And if the people want to borrow that money from you at, a contract, pay it off in a year, great. We can come up with the rules. But this is really a matter of survival, folks. Hello, who are you? Hello, 505. Who are you? What are you calling her for? Ah, okay. Just a standard sales call. This yeah, hang on to this like I don't have them. Hello, who's calling? Hello, you called me, you got me. More just harassment. Just harassment. Now, I'm going to be putting this whole thing together, the Liberty Village concept. I'll be putting that together for our next article. That article will go up in Veterans Today. It'll talk about a revolution. Okay, if you could talk to me. Hello, who's this? I can hear you this time, yes, sir. I can. I, I can hear you, but I'm doing a radio show right now. I will do that, sir. Thank you. Bye bye. this all of the work has been done. We've got so much in print and writing for this. The Oklahoma Co-op is working like a charm, and the way this Liberty Village in the city would be, if at least half the people on your block agree to do this, we'll select that block. If we can't, we'll move over to the next block. And it's a real opportunity for people. Real opportunity. Turn that and think about it this way. I mean, my house, I never had to have an office. I always worked out of my house. So my office is in my house now. My studio's in my house now. There's your tax break. Now, if you turn that house into where it's generating electricity, and you're selling the electricity back to the power company, as most states allow you to do now, you turn your house. All you got to do is put the solar film, buy the solar film, and a windmill. How hard is it to find a windmill? How hard is it to find a propeller? I mean, you could even build your generator out of old alternators. The problem that we have is the banks. And we know the plans now. We know the strategy. They want to. We just saw the whole martial law thing. People worried about martial law. I'm sorry, we've already had it. It's always been here. It's always been here. I mean, since they started driving you into the city, where they can control you. That's why you get this little chill when you see a cop car in your rearview mirror. He's out there, collector of the revenue. Collector of the revenue. Now, what we're doing is with this is eliminating that. Now, I've seen in some of these catalogs, they've got something that you can take the grease from McDonald's, put it into a little blender, let's say, and you can tell me about this Heisenberg and make diesel fuel out of it. Biodiesel. They've got a small unit that'll run biodiesel. Now, you got a Volkswagen diesel, you got a pickup truck that's diesel. What if we could make our own fuel for that in the backyard? I think that's possible. I don't know how to get the Harley to run off of diesel fuel, but maybe with a little bit more refining we could do that. You know, at one time we could run off of alcohol. We could run almost everything off of alcohol, but the banksters, the Rockefellers, Standard Oil changed all that. Knock it off, guys. What in the heck's wrong with you? Packy, get out of here. Alright. I talked about Detroit. We talked about Detroit on that first hour. You see the pictures of it. The buildings are run down. Nobody's there. Everything. It's a horrible situation. But you got the frames. You got the buildings there. Change the way we think about it. We don't need all these people living together in one building. You don't need the factories. Grow the food. Shopping malls. Turn shopping malls into gardens. So when people go in there to shop, they get to see what a working farm looks like. And one of the things that I intend to be doing here is talking to some landscaping companies. Already done that. I don't have the time to turn my backyard into a garden. How much you charge me to do that? And no, I don't think biodiesel destroys the engine. Still got uh, it's if we take one block here, and you can do this where you are. You know, this is really the whole point of this. I'm telling you how to do it. I'm telling you that we've got with through all the people that we've got through this network. We know about building. We can build things. We can work together, and we can really transform a neighborhood. I'd like to see a neighborhood block in Detroit transformed, and I'd be willing to bet you could get that on abandoned properties. Go in and claim abandoned property and put a little bit of time and effort into it, restore its wealth, and we can do this under this new type of thinking. Put a garden on the roof. Put a garden in the basement. Put grow lights up there. Change the way of thinking, and think of working together. Think of working together. Now I got about 30 minutes here. Think I'm gonna do. Yeah, let me play this. This is Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone, and he's telling you that we need a new American revolution. Here at Revolution Radio with the Liberty Village Co-op, we are going to work together. We are going to put this. Heisenberg will do the websites. We've already got links for you to sign up for. And that's all it takes. Hey, the only thing we're looking for are donations to keep Revolution running. I've got books to sell. I want to sell you a book. But the Liberty Village concept, that ain't something I'm going to make money off of. That's something you are going to make money off of in your neighborhood, in your town, in your county, in your state. That's a revolution. People working together instead of waiting for the government to come in and do it for us. I've said that Obama's idea of greening America is sell the top of that mountain there to a Chinese firm, so the Chinese firm can bring in these big wind generators, put them up, pipe all that money, all that energy back down the hill to the power company, so the power company can charge you more money for it, because they got new hands in the pie. What I'm talking about is self-sufficiency. What I'm talking about is recreating the foundation of every civilization, the self-sufficient family farm in your block, on your block. Take it back to the way it was 100 years ago. Come out of her and do this American Revolution with Revolution Radio, with the Free American, with the Liberty Villages right now. Oliver, how do you feel about that?
Let me ask a very simple question. Does it concern you that the government is spying on you? 30 years ago, to even ask this question would have been a scandal. If you lived through Watergate, if you read the Church Committee reports, you know the costs of unchecked government surveillance. The government is exploiting our amnesia. We did not pass the Fourth Amendment in order to protect those with something to hide. We passed that amendment which prohibits general warrants or limitless surveillance because we know all too well the cost of an unaccountable government. The question is not, do you have something to hide? The question is whether we control government or the government controls us. Remember, this struggle is part of who we are as a people. This country was born in rebellion because the British government was exerting too much control over American lives. We broke free and began to create a system of government meant to protect liberty. Our national history reveals a constant struggle to stay true to this value. We face one of those moments of struggle right now. Recent leaks have given us a glimpse into our government's gigantic surveillance machine. It's a machine that is eating our freedom. If this concerns you, and it should, you need to contact your representatives in Congress now. Ask them to end the tracking of Americans' domestic communications. I won't stand idly by while our civil liberties are eaten by the NSA's surveillance machine. You shouldn't either.
All right, that was Oliver Stone, and other people are really, let's see. Yeah, we've got the magnetic generators. We've got the magnetic generators. Yeah, it's happening. Oops. Yeah, let me see if oh yeah, let's hear from Tex Mars talking about what he's talking about. This is a lecture that he gave in college. It's about U.S. false education exposed, and that's what we're trying to get to. Timothy Bible College will have classes on restoring the farm, and people like Heisenberg and Hawk will be contributing to that. A lot of other people out there contributing to it. Now, part of the text under this lecture that Jim Mars is talking about is that we live under evil elite families who own everything and have a monopoly on our economy. They also destroyed our farmers, and we must bring farmers back. I want to do that.
We don't care who likes it or not, as long as we know it's the truth. As long as we know it's the truth.
Now the point of this is, most of what we think we know, we don't know. And it's wrong. And I just want you to keep that in mind. And this is not a conspiracy theorist. This is not Jim Mars's quote. This is Woodrow Wilson, a very powerful insider, an insider who was put into office by men connected to secret societies. He knew what was going on, and what did he write? Some of the biggest men in the United States are afraid of somebody. They're afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. How much more do you want, folks? He's trying to tell us what's going on. So I'm going to quickly run you through the modern secret societies and how they connect, and I'm going to try to do this as rapidly as possible to get to the really good stuff. We'll start with the Trilateral Commission, which is one of the more recent ones. This was formed in 1973 by David Rockefeller and one of his henchmen, Zygmunt Brzezinski. And it was obviously an outgrowth, an extension of the even older and more secretive Council on Foreign Relations, because David Rockefeller and Brzezinski were both members. All 7 original members of the Council on Foreign Relations were members of the, 7 members of the Trilateral Commission were members of the Council on Foreign Relations. So it's safe to say that it was simply a little more open, a little more public, extension of the Council on Foreign Relations. What it also did was, because of its name, trilateral, which refers to the trilateral nations of Japan at that time, to include China now, North America and Europe, the trilateral nations. And so not only was it an effort to have a little bit more open, less secretive organization, but also to include the Asian economies. They put out various position papers, and I particularly like the one they issued in 1975, Democracy in Crisis, where they basically said and argued that, you know, there's a little bit too much democracy in the United States, and it's just really not good for business, so maybe we need to curtail that a little bit. Now, that was 1975, and I asked some of you older folks here about my age, do we have more or less democracy in the United States today? Seems like that they're getting what they want. You might also notice, I find it interesting, the logo of the Trilateral Commission looks suspiciously like a stylized swastika, and that may not be my imagination, as you will soon see. Senator Barry Goldwater, in his book, No Apologies, just flat stated that the Trilateral Commission is intended to be the vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial banking interest by seizing control of the political government of the United States. In fact, that seems to be what exactly is going on right now is the federal government. Which brings us to George W. Bush, who I call a post hurdle. Somebody say, what's a post hurdle? Well, it's a term we have down in Texas. You're driving down a country road and you see a turtle perched up on top of a fence post. That's a post turtle. You know he didn't get there by himself. You know somebody put him up to it. And you know he can't do anything while he's up there. And basically all he want to do is help the poor creature down. Post turtle. If it wasn't so serious about what's going on, it really would be pretty laughable. So now that tracks back to the even more secretive Council on Foreign Relations. This was formed in 1921 by a group of people that were including Colonel House, who was the right-hand man, shadow to Woodrow Wilson. And their whole avowed purpose was to educate the American public on the desirability of global government. And why did they feel like they had to do that? Because they had already made their first attempt, the League of Nations. Okay? But it didn't work. Why? Because the Senate of the United States said, I'm not sure we're ready to give up our national sovereignty. How many times have you heard the politicians in the last year or two talk about sovereignty? They don't talk about it, do they? For that matter, when's the last time you heard a national politician refer to the republic? They don't talk about that much either, do they? And while we're here, let's stop and briefly, and let's explain what I'm talking about here. Oh, all they talk about is democracy. Democracy. Got to save democracy. We love democracy. The terrorists hate democracy. Well, what is democracy? Democracy is rule by the majority. What's the primary example of democracy in action? A lynch mob. Okay? Everybody says lynching, so they do. Folks, this is not what we were handed by our ancestors. This was never intended to be a pure democracy. What we are supposed to have in this country, with its Constitution, its Bill of Rights, is a democratic republic. Now, what's the difference? In a pure democracy, the lynch mob. Lynching, okay? You string him up. In a democratic republic, you have to go through a system of laws, checks and balances, courtroom procedure. You have to give the guy a fair trial. There are certain procedures and laws that you have to follow. He has the right to meet his accuser. He has the right to defense. He has the right to cross-examine the evidence and the witnesses against him. And then if he's found guilty, then you can hang him. Okay? That's what we're supposed to have. And this is not what we have now, is it? Now they can grab you, lock you up, and if they decide, if one man, John Ashcroft, who's up until 9/11's whole claim to fame was throwing covers over the bare breast of statues in Washington, D.C. because he was upset. Oh. Talk about a boob. I didn't say that. But on his word alone, you could be declared an enemy combatant and held without trial and without legal representation. They are stripping the liberties that we are guaranteed in this country, and it really is amazing to me because if Osama bin Laden was indeed behind the 9/11 attacks, and there's still been no real proof that he is, but if he was, and if his goal was to destroy democracy and to end our freedoms, he succeeded, hadn't he? But we know that some bearded guy over in a cave somewhere is not responsible for everything that's going on in the world today. Who's responsible are these people. Who's responsible are these people who have been working at this for hundreds of years. What's interesting is, notice, oops, they just cut the graphic. Can we put the graphic back up real quick? If you notice, over here is the CFR logo with the rider on the horse and the Roman, Latin inscription, and over here is a medallion of the ancient Knights Templars. Looks pretty close, doesn't it? Same deal, and the same objectives are going along. They consolidated all of this a long time ago with the formation of the CIA and with the National Security Act of 1947. The National Security Act of 1947 is really what began to sound the death knell for freedom and democracy in this country. It was signed on September the 27th, I believe, of 1947, and it's really interesting to see what happened there. Now, most of the things with the National Security Act of 1947 we're all kind of familiar with. We know it separated the Air Force from the Army as a separate branch of service. We know it created the CIA. We know that it changed the words of the title of the old War Department to the Defense Department, which is a pretty slick public relations move, because if you go back and look at that old War Department, oh, who wants a War Department? But under the old War Department, we only fought 3 wars. Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II. Under the Defense Department, where we're only going to defend ourselves, yeah, we had Korea, Vietnam, Kosovo, Panama, Grenada, Laos, Cambodia, Colombia, you name it. I think we need to go back to the War Department. We didn't have near as many wars. But within these secret societies now, and everybody that's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, or everybody that's a member of the Trilateral Commission, they are not all sinister conspirators who are trying to take over the world, okay? A lot of them are just wannabes, they want to be there, and they want to be taking over the world. Or actually, I would describe it this way. Remember when you were in grade school? And the thing you really wanted most out of life was to be able to sit at the table with the cool kids in the lunchroom. Boy, if I could just be with those cool kids, maybe I could get a date for Friday night, That's what you really wanted. Well, these are the people who are globbed onto these secret societies. Most of them are not on the inner core elite. They are just wannabes, and they like to be next to the wealth and the power, okay? But within each of these societies, there's a handful of people that, and one's David Rockefeller, he's in all of them, okay? Henry Kissinger, there's certain ones who are at the inner core of all of these societies. They meet once a year in a group known as the Bilderbergers. The Bilderbergers are so secretive that they don't even really have a name. They're called the Bilderbergers because they were first discovered by the public meeting in Holland back in 1954. And they were founded by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who had previously been a Nazi SS officer. And by the way, any of you all have Texaco gas cards? You do realize that Texaco is now bought by Shell. And Shell is that's the royal family of Holland, the founders of the Bilderbergers. So the New World Order marches on. And of course, then we've got Skull and Bones. I think we all know that Prescott Bush, the patriarch of the Bush family, and that George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush are all members of the Skull and Bones. Now, there are some who argue that the Skull and Bones is the secret society behind the secret societies and that they run everything. I'm not convinced of that. There are plenty of people who have been inducted into the Skull and Bones and who have elected not to follow through on all their contacts and have gone on to live very respectable and good lives, okay? The Skull and Bones, however, is a springboard. That's where they take young men, they find the ones with ability, and more importantly, those that are compliant, and they groom them to become world leaders. And all you have to do is just go study about the Skull and Bones, and you'll find that there is an inordinate number of people who go on to take top government positions. Again, if this was really a free country, you'd think that we'd have some people from, Southern Cal, University of Texas, Oklahoma, something. There's got to be some smart people around somewhere. But these folks are always the ones that end up in power. Also, it has been established that the Skull and Bones is actually the Order 322. It is the 322nd chapter of the Illuminati. This was published in the New York Times. Now we get to the question of how come you don't know all of this, and that gets back to the control of the media. First, you have to understand, the media cannot control these people, these secret societies cannot control all the editors and all the reporters across the country. No, they control the media through the distribution of the information. Just in the past several months, there have been some massive anti-war demonstrations taking place in California, in Denver, in Washington. And most of you have heard little or nothing about them. And when you did hear about them, 30,000 people gathering out. Try 500,000. There have been massive demonstrations in England and in Germany, and you very rarely hear about that. This is because they control not the editors and publishers, but the distribution of the information. And how do they do that? I've listed two here, Time Warner and Disney. There's another couple that I could mention. Viacom is another one. Daventi is another one. Clear Channel is now buying up all of the radio stations in this country. Clear Channel bought up Premier Radio not long back, and now two of its leading voices, Whitley Strieber and Art Bell, are no longer with us. Okay? And who owns Clear Channel? Well, it's connected to the Carlyle Group. That's Henry Kissinger and the Bush family. Okay? So they are clamping down on the access to information. And never lose sight of the fact is, I don't care how brilliant you are, if you make decisions based on faulty, erroneous, or incomplete information, you're not going to be making the right decision. At the top is a note that was written to James Tucker, who used to write for the old Spotlight, now writes for the American Free Press, and he has tracked the Bilderbergers for years. And this lady that was an ombudsman with the Washington Post sends him a note and says, well, if observations of Bilderberg, the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Aspen Institute, etc. hold true, there's much that is ponderous, but little that is newsworthy. How's that for a condescending, unthinking response? Let me put it this way. What do you think the news media's reaction would be if all of the owners of the National Football League franchises were to meet in a big hotel, secretly, with armed guards all around it, won't let the media in, won't let anybody in. They meet there for about a week, and then they all come out, sorry, I can't tell you what we talked about. Whew. Would they blow their lid or what? They'd be yelling price fixing, collusion, restraint of trade, they'd raise hell. But you get the leaders of commerce and banking and industry, and they meet once a year, and they hide themselves off in some big, well-guarded resort, and they come out and say, we're not going to tell you what we talked about. It makes a mockery of freedom of the press. It makes a mockery of freedom, period. We have got to start understanding who's really calling the shots, because until we understand what's really going on, how can we make any decisions or do anything about what's happening in our own country? I had to throw in this cartoon. It says, well, the CBS Viacom deal, look at what you get. Movies, MTV, radio, videos, Nickelodeon, news media, theme parks, billboards, Showtime, just about every kind of entertainment and advertising you can want. The guy says, well, what about the news? This is the news. This is the news. Think about it, folks. Not long back, I'm sitting at home, and I don't watch TV that much, but I happen to have it on. They said that we're going to interrupt for a news break. I'm going, okay, good. I'll catch the headline news. Got to get caught up. There were 4 stories that they put out over this 2-minute news break, whatever it is, and all 4 of them were sports stories. So-and-so won the Masters, so-and-so won some football game, some baseball game. Don't get me wrong. I love sports. But sports are sports. They are not news. You can get all excited about the big game, but then next week it's over with, and who cares? And what does it really matter? It doesn't. And that's what's masquerading, though, as news. Now, these folks, it's already been said right here at this conference that these folks are really the big, brightest, and the best, and they are more intelligent than we are. And it's only right and proper that they run everything, because they only have our best interest at heart. Well, let's look back over just the past 100 years. They've given us 2 world wars, 2 depressions, one acknowledged and the one currently not. And doesn't sound like they're operating in our best interest. Not at all. They give us the Persian Gulf War. That was Daddy Bush's war. Drew his line in the sand. Just happened to be north of the Harkin Energy holdings of his son George W., who just by sheer coincidence, I'm sure, sold off the bulk of those holdings right before the invasion of Kuwait and made himself almost a cool $1 million by selling short on that. You think Daddy might have whispered in his ear? Oh, no, wouldn't do that, would they? Of course they would. And then the whole thing ends, just as everything's closing in. Got too much to cover here. I could give you the whole story. When the American ambassador goes to Saddam Hussein, April Glaspie, and she testified to this in front of Congress but didn't go anywhere, he says, we're going to go back to our original boundaries, which means he's going to take back Kuwait, which was illegally taken and carved out of Iraq in the first place by the British years ago, so they could get their hands on some of those southern Iraqi oil reserves. And he asked the American ambassador, what do y'all think about that? And her almost exact answer was, well, I've been instructed to inform you that we consider that an Arab problem, and we don't really have any thoughts on that. What does that sound like? Sounds like do what you want to do. And then the minute he sends his troops into Kuwait, oh, he's the new Hitler. All right? And the Saudis put up a $12 billion war chest hidden in a secret account in London for George Bush to use to prosecute the Persian Gulf War. It's a deal, folks. It's just a deal. They're all just deals. This whole thing right now, I'll tell you what I suspect. We all know this thing from Battle Rock is about oil. But why do we need oil? We got plenty of oil in the United States, and we're not getting that much out of the Middle East anyway. And besides that, we now have our troops in Afghanistan, which means we now control the Caspian Sea oil reserves. Something that's been a big bone of contention for the last 100 years, ever since the Nobel brothers went over there and started production in the Caspian Sea area. When Hitler sent his Sixth Army charging through the Ukraine, they weren't going to capture Stalingrad. They were trying to get to those Caspian Sea oil reserves, but they got stopped at Stalingrad. It's been a big bone of contention. Everybody wants to get hold of Caspian Sea oil. Well, now we have it. And Britain now wants their share. They want the Iraqi oil. It's really funny because we see Tony Blair standing up, and he's pushing for war with Iraq just about as hard as George Bush. And we think, oh, our wonderful British allies, boy, they're with us through thick and thin. I think once you study these secret societies and where they came from and who's really behind all this, it's the other way around. BP wants the oil, but they can't move British troops into Iraq because, quite correctly, that would be perceived as aggression. But the United States has already fought a war with Iraq, so we can go in and take it for them. Y'all just hide and watch. We have a war, and we have a regime change, and we gain control over Iraq. You hide and watch if British Petroleum doesn't get a big chunk of that. It's all about oil. We all know that. And the problem is we're also fat and sassy. Yeah, but I got to have gas for my car, man. I got to drive down to the 7-Eleven and get back to cigarettes, you know. I mean, yeah, it's only a block away, but who wants to walk a block? You know, we are just really we just have no idea of the misery in most of the world because we all have it so well. I mean, you know. So it's all about oil, and my big complaint there is we don't need the damn oil, okay? We don't need to be on a petroleum energy basis anyway. There's so much other things we could be doing. Do you realize that with just some tweaking of the intake jets in your carburetor, you could be running your car on hydrogen? And hydrogen does not cause any pollution. And hydrogen is the most plentiful substance on the planet. Think about it. This is a water planet. H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. We could be burning hydrogen. We don't even need the damn oil. But no, we're going to go over there and kill a whole bunch of people and probably our own troops. And look what's happening with the Gulf veterans right now. They're all coming down with all kinds of sicknesses, probably because of the contaminated vaccines they got. Also, the depleted uranium shells that are lying everywhere, giving them a radiation dose that destroys their immunization system, not to mention the oily smoke and petrochemicals hanging in the air. And do you think that a new war with Iraq is going to be any better? Never mind the massive casualties that Iraq's going to suffer. Wait till our guys come back in another 20 years, and they'll be raising hell about their health problems. And what's the government going to do about it? I'll tell you right now, not a damn thing. Let me tell you something. When I was in the Army, this just really gets my blood to boiling when I think about this. When I was in the Army back during Vietnam, we'd get C rations, and in the C rations, along with some powdered milk and this, that, and the other thing, was a little packet of cigarettes. Get 5 little cigarettes. We always thought that was cool, free cigarettes. And those who didn't smoke would swap them around to those who did, and it was almost a medium of exchange. And that practice goes way on back even through World War II. Where do you think all those guys in World War II got the smoking habits? Because the Army gave them free cigarettes. And now, under the Clinton administration, when some of these guys who put their life on the line to fight for freedom and democracy in World War II, and they start coming down with emphysema and lung cancer, and they go to the VA under the Clinton administration, they ruled that that was a self-inflicted disease and that they would not treat the veterans. That's shameful, folks. That's shameful. You give your soldiers cigarettes all through their career and you won't treat them when they get a health-related problem? Unconscionable. But that's what happens when you let these secret society creeps run the country. Going back past the Gulf War, and now we get back to Vietnam, and Lyndon Johnson and his wise men, okay, he surrounded himself with about 12, 14 guys, and they were every one of them Council on Foreign Relations. In fact, Vietnam, the thing I never could quite figure out is why would we fight 9,000 miles away from the shores of the United States? Let me tell you why. Because right after World War II, the Council on Foreign Relations published some papers that were saying we needed to gain control over the mineral resources of Southeast Asia, which at that time was called French Indochina. All right, but then in the spring of 1954, the French got defeated at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, and they withdrew from French Indochina. Within weeks, John Foster Dulles, a founder of the Council on Foreign Relations, and who was then Secretary of State to Dwight Eisenhower, goes to the Philippines and creates something called the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, SEATO. And he later explained that he did that to give the American president the legal precedent for intervention in Southeast Asia. That was the beginning of the whole thing. Now, is he acting on the best interest of the United States, or is he acting on the best interest of the Council on Foreign Relations that wanted control over those mineral resources? And, of course, I don't have to tell you what happened. 58,000 American lives later, we finally slunk away with our tail between our legs defeated by a bunch of guys in rubber sandals, thanks to the wise men.
All
And in the
right.
middle of this, when our guys are dying,
All right. We're hang on a second. Let's see if I can get that. Don't know why. FreeAmerican.com. Check it out. And we'll have a great weekend. Have a great weekend. God bless.